Welcome to this 8th class about evolution and reinforcement learning. In this class we will see how to combine evolution and deep reinforcement learning to optimize diversity. So first, why are we interested in diversity? There are two cases. First, there is the sparse reward case. So for instance, imagine your robot whose role is to collect balls in the environment and it's just performing blindly some trajectories without a sensor. If there is only one ball on the tennis court, it will be very difficult to find it, and the robot will learn nothing by doing the trajectories until it finds a ball. So that's the sparse reward case, and it is quite clear that if the robot always performs the same trajectory again and again, it won't find the ball. Whereas if it has trajectories as diverse as possible, the probability that it finds the ball will increase. The other case is the deceptive gradient case. This one is a little more tricky to explain. So let's take the example of the mountain car experiment. In mountain car, you should push a car left or right so that it reaches the flag. But one point is that your car is underpowered. You cannot just push right until you reach the flag. You have to get some momentum by pushing back and forth until you have enough momentum to reach the top of the hill. But the point is that in a mountain car, or in particular in the continuous version of mountain car, you pay some small negative reward for putting energy left or right. So the more you push left or right, the bigger negative reward you get. And the point is that if you don't reach the flag, the agent will consider that it's better to do nothing and to get zero than moving a lot around and getting a negative reward. So in that case, reinforcement learning will teach the agent to stop moving and to stay there, which is of course not what we are looking for. So in that case, we can say that the gradient is deceptive as it drives the behavior of the agent into a poor direction. And in that case, you can see that if you just try to get diverse behavior and you ignore the reward signal, your chance to reach the flag is higher. So we should look for diversity to solve these different kinds of problems. But the point is that diversity in some irrelevant behaviors is not a good solution. For instance, if you have an ant and you want to travel the ant out of a maze, and your diversity is just in the movement of the legs, and the movement of the legs do not make it that the ant moves, then this is not useful diversity. So what can we do? We should build a measure of diversity that matters, and we will do this with what is called the behavior descriptors. So we would like to get policies that behave differently with respect to some domain-relevant criteria. And in what I will show you in this lesson, these domain-relevant criteria are given by ant. So what we will do in practice is that we will define behavior descriptors and we will try with diversity mechanism to cover the space of these descriptors, and we will do this with the hope that at some point into this behavior descriptor space get rewarded, and that by finding diversity in the space, the agent will discover how to get rewarded. For instance, in locomotion experiments such as Alpha or these other examples, humanoid, etc., you may consider one behavior descriptor, which is the running speed, which is of course relevant when you are interested in locomotion, or the frequency of ground contacts, the height of the head of the humanoid, etc. In maze navigation, one very relevant descriptor is the final point reached by some trajectory or the distance traveled, etc., etc. In principle, these behavior descriptor spaces can be learned with some representation learning methods, but this won't be covered into that particular lesson. So we will see that to evolve policies for diversity, there are two different frameworks that have to be distinguished. The first one is the novelty search framework. In this framework, we just consider the novelty of behaviors that we have obtained. So we want to only find behaviors that are different from each other. By contrast, in the quality diversity framework, we are interested both in diversity and in performance of policies, we will see that we get different solutions into a representation of the descriptor space, and that we will try to optimize both at the same time. So in these figures, I use BC for behavior characterization, but that's the same as behavior descriptors that I rather note BD. And the point of this behavior characterization or descriptor is that they describe whole trajectories. They describe what an agent did when performing a particular trajectory with some quantitative measure. To put the main point quickly, the novelty search approach only looks for diversity. So it is better in the absence of reward or when the reward signal is very sparse or deceptive, whereas the quality diversity approach will be more appropriate when the reward signal is more dense and can contribute to the policy search process. So let's start with novelty search first. The idea is to evolve just some novelty with respect to an archive of policies. So what does this mean? It means that the fitness function of this evolutionary method will be a distance to other policies in the behavior descriptor space. So for each policy, it provides you with some points in the behavior descriptor space, and you want to find policies that are away from the other points in the behavior space. In practice, what we take in general is the mean distance to the k nearest neighbors, as it happens that this measure of distance is more continuous than just the distance to the closest or the minimal distance to the k closest neighbors. I won't go into the details about novelty search methods in general, but the point is that you have to maintain an archive of previously tried policies, but you don't want this archive to be too big. So what you need is some archive management method where you remove or add different policies depending on the context. This general idea of novelty search was first published in this paper from Lehman and Stanley, Abandoning Objective Evolution Through the Search for Novelty Alone. So to cover this literature, let's have a look at a way now to combine novelty search with reinforcement learning. The general idea of novelty search is here. You have a population that interacts with the environment. It provides trajectories. From these trajectories, you compute a behavior characterization or a behavior descriptor. The corresponding points are put most often in the archive. From the archive, you can compute the novelty of a particular behavior characterization depending on how close it is to the other points. This novelty provides you a fitness, and you loop that this way. So that's the general description of novelty search. And the point is that when you combine this with reinforcement learning, the trajectories can also be put into a replay buffer, and you can use a critic and an actor to evolve your population. One natural combination will consist in using novelty as a measure of the performance of your actor so as to improve the novelty of your population. Actually, the figure suggests three cases: a case where your novelty is used just as fitness, or is used just as reward for the critic case, or both. And for instance, in the novelty search reinforcement learning algorithm, which corresponds to this paper, it is used both as fitness as an reward in the case where the agent learns goal condition policies. Now, if the novelty is used just as fitness, then the combination with reward for the critic and fitness for the evolution part comes very close to a quality diversity method, and it remains to investigate the differences between this approach and quality diversity methods. So in this part, I have already presented to you very quickly the novelty search reinforcement learning algorithm, but we will also see different algorithms which combine novelty seeking and reinforcement learning in different ways. First, there is the ARAC paper. And the key innovation of ARAC is that only data from the most novel agent is sent to the replay buffer. So here you filter the data from the trajectories depending on how novel they are, so that you maintain a lot of diversity in your replay buffer. And by maintaining diversity in your replay buffer, you have an agent that explores very well, so it will help a lot improve your population. By contrast, in P3S TD3, you have a population of agents, and you are applying a gradient method so that the population of agents moves as close as possible to the top agent in the population, using both an evolutionary method and a reinforcement learning method. But be careful, in P3S TD3, the algorithm is not using behavior descriptors or behavior characterization. They are just considering distances in the policy parameter space, and this space does not guarantee diversity in terms of behavior. So this is not a so efficient algorithm in terms of looking for diversity. Another family of methods, they look for diversity, but they don't combine evolution and reinforcement learning. For instance, you have SVPG, which is described here, and you can see that there is no evolutionary loop. You just use a reinforcement learning loop with multi-actor reinforcement learning, and you combine the gradient from the different actors using some attraction and repulsion mechanisms. And these mechanisms are used to model a distribution of high-performing policies using Stein variational gradient descent. SVPG is this paper. And the other option here, you don't have the reinforcement learning, you just have evolution. But the idea is that to manage distance between policy parameters, you use a determinantal variational process, which maximizes the volume between different agents. So it's more a global management of the distances versus managing the one-to-one distances between individuals. And in both of these approaches, there is no behavior characterization space. So again, you use distance in policy parameter space, so you are not that efficient in looking for diversity. Let's now move to the second family of methods, so the quality diversity methods. So in quality diversity methods, in general, you have some representation of your archive as a multi-dimensional space, which is split into small regions. And what is interesting is the way you fill this region. Actually, each time you get a specific agent, you get its behavior characterization. And if it is the only one to have the behavioral characterization corresponding to a region, you will add it to your archive. And if there is already an individual in the particular cell which is targeted by this behavior characterization, then you compare the performance and you keep the one over the two which performs best. So you will replace lesser performing individuals by better performing individuals when they correspond to the same cell. So in these methods, you have two mechanisms, one to improve the quality, so the performance of policies, and one to improve the diversity. And actually, you can use the evolutionary method to improve the diversity and the reinforcement learning to improve the quality, or vice versa. And it happens that all combinations exist. Here you have a small table of the different algorithms. I won't detail them all. I will just give you details about the QDPG algorithm that we will see just now. So in QDPG, we have a map-elite grid made of cells where you put the individual according to the rules that I have just explained to you. So we have this population of agents. The trajectories corresponding to evaluation of these agents are put into a replay buffer. And this replay buffer is used to update two critics. One is a diversity critic, which applies diversity policy gradient to the policies that are in the population. And the other one is a quality critic, so that's a standard reinforcement learning critic that applies standard policy gradient to the population. And in practice, we can apply the quality gradient to part of the population, the diversity gradient to another part of the population, so that the population evolves both diversity and quality. There are much more intricate details in QDPG. For instance, the author used a state descriptor in addition to behavior descriptor to favor step-based diversity, because reinforcement learning is a step-based approach, whereas evolution is a trajectory-based method. And I let you have a look at the paper if you want to know more. In general, when you use quality diversity methods, you end up with these kinds of diagrams where you have a top view of the archive. And on this view, you can see cells where you don't have found any solutions. And in the cells where there is a solution, you can see whether the performance is rather bad with, for instance here, a dark blue color, or whether it is good with a yellow color. And you can see that, for instance, in this diagram, this algorithm performs better than the other ones because it covers the whole space and it has a lot of good performing solution, whereas this one does not have good performing solution and this one does not cover the whole space. In more details, in particular, this map-elite evolution strategies has a poor coverage, and QDRL in the particular experiments of these authors was performing rather badly, probably due to difficulties to tune QDRL as we did in the previous paper. So final remarks about this domain, about diversity for reinforcement learning. As I said, looking for diversity is key to solving hard explorations problems where you have sparse rewards and deceptive gradient problems. So this is a kind of hard exploration problem where you have to collect, for instance, several objects into a flat. And this combination of diversity methods and reinforcement learning is a growing field. It's moving from pure evolutionary conferences like GECO or evolutionary computation conference to machine learning conferences such as NeurIPS, ICLR, etc. In this domain, a lot of key questions remain to be investigated. But the point is that combining these algorithms has more potential, but you have to tune more hyperparameters, which is difficult. This is why I will add a final lesson about population-based training, which facilitates hyperparameter tuning. So thank you for listening, and don't hesitate to send an email if you have questions.